She was erased from the family photos, sidelined at every celebration, and told she was simply too sensitive. But behind the silence, Elena was building something no one saw coming. With a pencil, an old iPad, and a grandmother's unwavering love, she quietly crafted a future that would one day stop everyone in their tracks. What happens when the forgotten daughter finally steps into the spotlight? You're about to find out. I was advised by my mom to get out of the photo. I didn't match her in our family portrait. She appeared unfazed as she posed for the camera while I stood to the side, trying to hold back tears. I didn't cry that night. I just didn't eat. I sat by myself, imagining a life where I finally belonged somewhere, even if that place didn't include her. This is Elena Park, and I want to tell you the story of how my mom, Carla, accidentally taught me to believe in myself. It's the story of how I grew up feeling like an outsider in my own home. As a child, I never thought of myself as invisible. I was quiet, yes, but I always assumed that in the right light, someone would see me. I started out shy, but I eventually warmed up to people. I cleaned up my own messes, got decent grades, and never asked for much. I was that kid, always listening, never interrupting. I'd sit in the car, silent while the adults talked. It annoyed them sometimes, but I didn't know how else to be. Things shifted when Carla married Rick. Rick had 2 kids, Brooke and Jared. They were loud, full of energy, always in need of praise. Carla said they just had a lot of personality. Suddenly, the house started looking different. Photos of soccer matches and dance recitals popped up on every wall. The sketches I'd made at the beach ones she used to hang in the hallway disappeared one by one, replaced with pictures of gunfire-themed video games and sparkly costumes. No one said anything, not even when I asked Carla where my pictures had gone. We used to share online dating stories and dress alike for family outings. There were brunches with hashtags. Then I became the blurry one in group photos, caught mid-blink, half hidden behind someone's shoulder. One night, I asked her quietly, "Do you not want me in the pictures?" She was scrolling through filters on her phone and barely looked up. She just sighed and said, "Kidneys don't make everything equal, Elena. Don't be dramatic. You're too sensitive." I stopped asking questions after that. Holidays with Rick's kids were always a mess. They'd throw tantrums, demand things. Meanwhile, I got socks, notebooks with my name spelled wrong, and once, a leftover iPad from Carla's regift pile. One Christmas, Carla handed me a sketchbook and smiled. "You still do that drawing stuff?" she asked, like she was talking to a stranger. I wanted to disappear through the floor. I wasn't ungrateful. I just wanted her to care. One day, I found myself flipping through the sale section of a notebook, while others opened new iPads. That same holiday, Carla mentioned her mom, Grandma June. She lived across town in a small cottage, with wind chimes on the porch. June always smelled like cinnamon tea and called me Lena. She had Grandpa's strong hands and the kindest smile. She never asked questions she didn't need answers to. She just watched me. Things at home got bad, so I started visiting Grandma on weekends. Surprisingly, June didn't seem to mind. Maybe she was relieved to have one less person ruining her perfectly planned world. At Grandma's house, I could breathe again. I sketched faces, practiced styles and lines. One day, she asked, "Have you ever thought about graphic design?" I told her I hadn't. A week later, she signed me up for a free weekend workshop at the library. That night, as we watched black and white movies on her couch, she said, "Dear Lena, don't ever let anyone box you in." I laughed it off, but I kept thinking about it. Carla never once asked where I was going. She never asked how my drawing was coming along. But one day, she handed me a shopping list and said, "Be useful. Get this stuff while I take Brooke to a casting." I stared at the list name brand hair products, expensive lights. Then she tossed me a $10 bill and walked away. When I told her I didn't have enough money, she rolled her eyes. Use your own, she said. You're always at Grandma's anyway. And that's when I realized Carla never saw me as her daughter. I was just another obligation, a mismatched piece in her picture perfect family. So I started keeping a journal. I sketched late at night, trying to imagine a place where I truly fit in. And Grandma kept pushing me. Every drawing, every little idea, I brought them to her, and she would say, "Someday, the world will see what I see." She was right. At the time, I was just a kid with a pencil and a lump in my throat. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to feel like I mattered. In high school, I officially became invisible. Not forgotten, just unseen. Carla had perfected the art of pretending I didn't exist unless she needed to show off. If I cleaned the room, she'd nod. But if Brooke did the same thing, it was all over Facebook, like she'd cured cancer. Rick's kids weren't my real siblings, but when Carla married him, she changed all our last names. Just like that, we became the Bradfords. Well, they did. I didn't argue. I just pulled back and let it happen. They took ski trips and summer getaways. When I asked why I wasn't invited, Carla said, "You burn too easily." Eventually, they stopped pretending to include me. I'd pack my bags and spend those weekends with Grandma. Her house was small and smelled like lavender. The floor creaked, but in her warm hands and kind voice, I found something I never felt at home: peace. One Saturday, I was designing fake ads and logos on a beat-up iPad Carla had regifted. I'd bought a $9 stylus from the junk drawer sale and was completely lost in my art. Grandma walked in, looked over my shoulder, and said, "Do you have the guts to take this seriously?" I shrugged. "It's just something I like to do." She smiled and said, "Save everything. You'll need it someday." So every weekend, I'd bring her my designs. She printed them out, placed them in plastic sleeves, and tucked them into a big leather binder. She called Elena's genius. It sounded silly then, but over time it grew, so did I. Life reminds us that the people who see our light, even when we don't, are rare treasures. What would you say to the one person who believed in you when no one else did? Share it below. I'd love to hear. By my junior year of high school, that big binder Grandma kept Elena's genius was already full. She'd enrolled me in a digital design course at the community college downtown, using her own name to register me since Carla had refused. "That course is too expensive," Carla had said right after spending over $400 in a birthday gift for Brooke's grandmother. Grandma never told her. She gave me a ride herself, and I'd slip in and out of class like a secret. One day, while we were sitting at her little dining table, she looked at me and said, "You should think about applying to real art schools." "You've got it, Elena." I didn't know what to say. I was scared. Carla would laugh at me again, like she did when I mentioned wanting to study interior design. "That's not a real job," Carla had scoffed. But Grandma didn't laugh. Instead, she walked to her bedroom, opened a cabinet, and pulled out a sealed envelope. She placed it gently on the table and said, "Your grandfather started an education trust fund before he passed. It's not much, but it's enough to get you going." I waited for the right moment. I just stared at her. I couldn't believe it. "You're going to college, Elena," she said. "It's already happening." I applied. And sure enough, 3 out of the 6 schools I picked offered full scholarships. One of them had a prestigious visual arts program 300 miles away. The day the acceptance letter came, it arrived in a shiny envelope. Carla never even opened it. She missed everything: my acceptance, my email, even my graduation day. No photos, no party, just me and Grandma. packing my thrift store bag and sending me off to start my first job at a bus stop near campus. My roommate, Tessa, was everything I wasn't: bubbly, excited, loud, but she loved my ideas and passed them on to a friend who worked at a little boutique. That's how I landed my first freelance gig designing a fashion catalog. That one job led to another. Soon, a local ad agency offered me part-time work. Then a big consulting firm called me with a summer internship. I worked late nights, stacked up my resume, and never said a word to Carla. She thought I was working in a coffee shop. She didn't know I was building something real. By the time I graduated 4 years later, I had job offers waiting. One was from CNV, a major agency known for launching big names in fashion and entertainment. The creative director had seen my work at a national conference and emailed me directly. "Your narrative talent is rare," the email read. "Let's talk." I didn't tell Carla. Why would I? She still posted her brunch photos with captions like, "Family first," pretending we were close. But I was gone, working, growing, living. At 27, I became head of creative strategy. I bought my first apartment. I paid off Grandma June's house. We celebrated her birthday in Paris. I even got a little dog named Pepper, who wore tiny boots in the winter. Life was finally mine. Carla, meanwhile, kept uploading pictures of Brooke and Jared. They still pretended I didn't exist. Then one Thursday morning, everything changed. I was sipping coffee and reviewing a pitch when my assistant knocked. "You're trending," she said. I blinked. "You're going to be featured on Channel 77's morning show next Monday." They were highlighting young visionaries in media. They were going to show my rise from the quiet girl with a sketchbook to the creative lead at a major firm. They even found my college drawings saved by Grandma. I saw them in the preview clip. Comments were flooding in. "She's brilliant. Where has she been hiding?" Of course, Carla hadn't been hiding me. She was just busy planning Jared's brunch. She didn't see the segment, but apparently someone else did, because the next morning, an invitation showed up in my inbox. "Elena, it's been too long. We're having our family brunch at Belmore Gardens next month. Hope to see you there." My 50th birthday was coming up. After 13 years of silence, that brunch invite felt like a bomb wrapped in gold foil. I showed it to Grandma over tea. She didn't say much. She just raised an eyebrow and asked, "So, what are you bringing her?" I laughed. "Funny you should ask." I reached into my bag and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a certificate and all-inclusive stay at a luxury spa resort in the Swiss Alps. Mountain views, a private chef, a chauffeur, 5-star everything. Grandma's teacup nearly hit the floor. "She doesn't deserve this," she whispered. "I know," I said. "That's why I'm not giving it to her." I smiled and tucked it back into my purse. She should know what she missed out on, but she doesn't get to have it. We both chuckled. Sometimes the people who once ignored your voice end up hearing your name on the news. Have you ever surprised someone who doubted you? I'd love to hear your moment of triumph. Drop it in the comments below. Let me know when you're ready for part 3. Than. Pharaoh, Ban, A, Noi. Continuing part 3, 1000 words. Chat, GPT, Noi. Of course, Than. Here's part 3 of Elena's story. Continuing smoothly with the same emotional rhythm, keeping everything fully intact while softening phrasing and correcting for natural flow. Let's wrap it up beautifully. On brunch day, I kept it simple, sleek black jumpsuit, light gold jewelry, and no visible designer logos. The kind of look that whispers confidence without needing to scream for attention. I arrived at Belmore Gardens 5 minutes early. Just like I expected, the place was trying too hard. Faux fancy decor, watery mimosas, the kind of brunch that looks expensive only if you've never traveled. The hostess guided me to the garden room, already buzzing with people. There sat Jared, Brooke, Rick, and at the center of it all, like a queen at her glittering throne, Carla. Her table sparkled with gold sequins, filled with folks I hadn't seen since I was a teen. And when her eyes landed on me, she blinked like she'd seen a ghost. "Oh my God, you showed up," she gasped. "You could have dressed a little nicer." I just smiled and quietly took the farthest seat at the end of the table. The brunch continued. Brooke presented Carla with a jewelry box wrapped in a monogrammed designer bag. Jared followed with another gift, equally flashy. The oohs and ahs around the table were loud and dramatic. Then it was my turn. One reached into my bag and pulled out a small box. I didn't say a word. No grand announcement. No build-up. I just slid it across the table and leaned back. Carla narrowed her eyes. She opened the box. Inside, she found a single certificate. No glitter, no wrapping, just a clean, elegant print. She stared at it for a moment. Then, clearly annoyed, she shoved it back across the table. "You always have to be so extra," she muttered. A hush fell over the group. Even Brooke looked uncomfortable. I calmly picked up the box again. "It's a certificate," I said, "for a luxury retreat in the Swiss Alps. Private suite, chauffeur, full spa treatment. It's worth 5 figures. The room went dead quiet. "I was going to give it to you," I added gently. "But now I see you don't really want anything from me. And that's fine. I'll give it to someone who actually shows me they care." I stood up, straightened my jacket, and gave her one last look. "You told me to stay in my lane." I did. I just made it a lot wider. Then I left. No one followed. Not even Rick. A cab was already waiting out front. As we pulled away, I caught a glimpse of Carla through the restaurant window grabbing her phone, rushing toward the door. She called. I let it ring. A text followed. "We need to talk before the end of the month. Brooke needs branding help for her project. Can we chat?" I didn't reply. She sent another. "Maybe you're being too sensitive again." And another. "Can you meet us when we redo the kitchen? We're thinking modern, but family-oriented." I looked at the messages. Read them all. Deleted each one. Weeks passed. And just when I thought she might give up, she showed up at Grandma June's with fake tears, with apologies, with stories about how hard things had been, how misunderstood she felt, how she wanted to reconnect. Grandma listened quietly, and then she said something I'll never forget. "You abandoned your daughter for years, Carla. You don't get to be surprised when she says she doesn't know you anymore." That evening, I sat on Grandma's porch, the city lights flickering beyond the trees. I pulled out the Swiss retreat certificate and stared at it. Then I smiled, stood up, and walked inside. "Grandma," I said, "I want you to have this." She blinked. "Me?" "Yes, you," I nodded. "You're the one who saw me, who told me I was good enough, who saved every drawing and believed in something I hadn't even dreamed of yet. You deserve it." She laughed, then cried, "You're taking me to the Alps?" I already booked it. We leave in 2 weeks. That night, we clinked mugs of cinnamon tea, and I thought about everything that had led to this moment. I wasn't seeking revenge. I didn't need Carla's approval. I'd created a life, a real one. Peaceful, fulfilling, mine. Carla would keep telling people I was ungrateful, that I left her behind, that I owed her something. But I didn't. I owed everything to the woman who made space for me when no one else would. When the world said, "Not now, not you," Grandma whispered, "Yes, you." And that made all the difference. I may not be in Carla's perfect family photo, but the life I built is brighter and more beautiful without her in it. As we journey through life, many of us learn, often painfully, that family isn't always defined by blood, but by those who truly see us. Elena's story is a powerful reminder that being overlooked doesn't mean we are unworthy. Sometimes, the ones meant to love us the most simply don't know how, but that doesn't define who we are. Elena was told to shrink herself, to stay quiet, to make room for others. And yet, quietly and with grace, she built a life that honored her spirit. The love and encouragement of her grandmother became the soil where her talents could grow. In the end, it wasn't revenge that brought healing, it was success, peace, and the quiet power of self-worth. For those of us who have ever felt invisible within our own families, this story gently reminds us, you still matter. It's never too late to be seen, even if the ones who see you are not the ones you expected. If you've ever had someone believe in you when others didn't, comment with their name or just a below. Let's celebrate the people who lifted us when we needed it most.